alone with your thoughts.
Exactly. Or, well, I mean, if you're not a driver, put yourself in your own backyard. It's a Friday night. You have just survived this brutally long, grinding week at work.
You've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. And you are finally kicking back in this slightly rusted lawn chair, staring up at a clear, star-filled sky, just, trying to decompress and let the week wash off you.
Just seeking out the familiar.
Right. You're looking up, expecting the comfort of the familiar, and then suddenly, without warning, you catch a glimpse of something in the sky. And I don't mean a shooting star.
No, not a meteor shower either.
Right. I mean, you see something that straight up fundamentally breaks the laws of physics right in front of your eyes. Like, it moves in a way that your brain instantly categorizes as impossible.
Which is, frankly, a profound, almost violent moment of psychological disconnect.
Violent is a good word for it.
Because, as humans, we're heavily conditioned to expect the sky to behave in a very specific, rigidly predictable way.
Yeah, we know what airplanes look like.
Exactly. We understand the arc of a plane. We understand the flicker of a helicopter, right? You look up, and your brain is essentially seeking out the mundane to confirm that reality is still, well, functioning as it should.
But when it doesn't function as it should, the immediate reaction is almost panic, isn't it? I mean, I've thought about this a lot. Your brain doesn't just calmly accept that the laws of aerodynamics were just violated.
No. Absolutely not. It starts racing.
It practically trips over itself. It's desperately trying to debunk what you are staring at.
Yeah.
It feels like you are actively bargaining with reality.
That's a great way to put it.
You stand there in your backyard and you tell yourself, okay, calm down, that's just a bird, and its feathers are catching the moonlight in a weird way.
Or, you tell yourself, it's got to be a high-altitude military jet catching the reflection of the sunset over the horizon.
Exactly. We run through the whole modern checklist.
It is a frantic search for a recognizable pattern, really.
Yeah.
And the psychological term for that phenomenon is cognitive dissonance. Our brains are these incredibly efficient, highly evolved prediction engines.
Right. They want things to make sense.
Their primary job is to crave order and anticipate the immediate future based on past experiences. So when we encounter a genuine anomaly,
something that just completely shatters our mental model.
Exactly. Something operating in a way that would make a tenured physics professor throw their chalk and walk out of the lecture hall, the psychological discomfort is immediate and severe.
So we just lie to ourselves?
We instinctively scramble to normalize the impossible. We violently shove this round peg into a square hole. We label it a weather balloon, a satellite, or an optical illusion just to alleviate that unbearable mental friction.
You think, is this another one of Elon Musk's Starlink satellites getting deployed, or is this some Silicon Valley billionaire's brand new low-orbit hobby project that they forgot to tell the FAA about?
All right, just flipping through the Rolodex of acceptable answers.
But deep down, it's a massive reach. You know the explanation you just frantically fed yourself is flimsy, and this thing you just saw is entirely different.
And that exact feeling is what we're looking at today.
Yes, that lingering tension between what we have been taught is impossible and what is actively happening right in front of our eyes. That is exactly what we are focusing on in today's deep dive.
Right, so today's mission for this deep dive is to rigorously examine the source material from a truly fascinating, paradigm-shifting text. It's called The New Era of Cosmic Curiosity.
Such a great title.
It really is. And we are going to aggressively break down the actual technical evidence of these sightings. We need to carefully contrast those documented capabilities with our own strict, rigid human aviation limits.
Which are pretty strict, as we'll get into.
Very strict. From there, we will evaluate the most prominent and sometimes wildest origin theories presented in the text.
Oh, we are definitely getting into the wild ones later.
We have to. And ultimately, we need to discuss how this entire phenomenon fundamentally challenges our assumed place in the universe.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp the sheer weight of where we are right now with this topic, we have to rewind and talk about where we started.
The history of the stigma.
Exactly. For decades, my entire life really, the mere mention of the subject was the ultimate social kryptonite.
Oh, absolutely.
If you were at a neighborhood BBQ on a Sunday afternoon and you brought up the UFO thing while people were passing the potato salad, you were basically asking to be alienated.
You were making yourself the punchline of the party.
You really were. It was relegated to the guys who supposedly spent way too much time wandering out in the Nevada desert with a camcorder.
Right, heavily, almost systematically stigmatized.
If you started rambling about flying saucers, people looked at you like you'd been out in the sun too long or, like you'd been hitting the cactus juice way too hard.
For the better part of 70 years, it was universally treated not as a scientific curiosity, but as a fringe, tinfoil hat fever dream.
Exactly, the domain of the eccentric. It was the stuff of 3.0 a.m. conspiracy documentaries with the creepy synth music in the background. It was the absolute definition of cringe.
Yes.
If you wanted to maintain your professional reputation or just not be the weirdo at the party, you simply kept your mouth shut about it.
But what the new era of cosmic curiosity meticulously documents is a massive, unprecedented paradigm shift regarding all of this.
It really has shifted, hasn't it?
Dramatically. The cultural climate surrounding this topic has shifted almost overnight in historical terms. That suffocating stigma is actively dying out.
And it's not just pop culture changing its mind.
No, the catalyst for that death isn't a change in pop culture at all. It is the sheer quality, and more importantly, the unimpeachable source of the new evidence.
Right. We aren't looking at blurry photos anymore.
Exactly. We are no longer debating grainy, ambiguous, easily doctored Polaroids from a farmer's field in the 1950s.
I mean, we are talking about actual, verified, declassified footage from Navy fighter jets. We are talking about highly trained pilots speaking out. But I have to ask, why the sudden transparency? Why now?
Well, the discussion has shifted out of necessity, really, because the heavy hitters, the intelligence committees, the government officials, the highest-ranking military personnel, they are being cornered by their own data.
They can't hide it anymore.
Right. These are sprawling, bureaucratic institutions that traditionally keep things strictly on the ultimate DL. They are inherently risk-averse.
No, completely.
They're highly protective of their credibility. And as a rule of thumb, governments generally avoid acknowledging anything that they cannot control or adequately defend against.
That makes total sense. If you can't shoot it down, don't admit it's there.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yet, despite all those institutional instincts, they are now openly admitting in public hearings that there are unidentified crafts operating with absolute impunity inside restricted airspace.
Operating with impunity, buzzing around nuclear carriers like they own the place, that is the part that I cannot get over.
It's staggering.
The old comfortable excuses, the temperature inversions, the swamp gas catching fire, the errant weather balloons, they just aren't cutting it anymore because the sensor data is too precise.
The instrumentation is simply too good now.
Right. The country is waking up to the fact that something seriously weird is happening, and the data backs it up. And it seems like, to deal with the shock of that reality, the government has completely rebranded the whole phenomenon.
Yes, the linguistic shift.
Yeah, nobody official says UFO anymore. Now it's all about UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena.
It is a highly deliberate, calculated linguistic shift by the defense and scientific communities.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. Doesn't UAP sound incredibly sterile?
It does sound clinical.
It sounds so corporate. To me, it feels like a strategic PR rebrand, pure and simple.
Yeah.
Are they just dressing up the old concept of little green men in a tailored tuxedo so the suits in D.C. can talk about it in committee hearings without losing their security clearances?
I see where you're going with that.
I mean, it feels like they are taking a very weird haunted house, slapping a fresh coat of beige paint on it, and calling it modern real estate so that serious scientists don't feel embarrassed walking through the front door.
I understand the cynicism there. I really do. But what's fascinating here is that while it absolutely serves a public relations function, that exact sterile rebrand is precisely what enables actual data-driven scrutiny.
You think so?
Absolutely. You have to consider how language dictates perception. The term UFO carries immense historical baggage.
That's true. It comes with a lot of baggage.
It comes preloaded with decades of pop culture mockery, B-movie invasions, and tabloids at the grocery checkout line. The moment a pilot or a scientist used the term UFO, their credibility was instantly attacked.
They were automatically the crazy person.
Exactly. By stripping away that accumulated baggage and introducing a clinical term like UAP, you effectively remove the immediate societal reflex to laugh.
I guess I see that. You're saying it neutralizes the topic.
It completely neutralizes the stigma. It strips away the swamp gas and tinfoil hat associations. By changing the terminology, it allows the broader scientific community, the military, and society at large to finally approach the phenomenon as an empirical data problem rather than a fringe belief system.
It makes it a math problem instead of a ghost story.
Precisely. It creates a necessary safe space for serious, well-funded inquiry. It gives a physicist permission to study the radar tracks without risking their tenure.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. It gives them institutional cover to take it seriously. But honestly, the Pentagon wouldn't risk their pristine, buttoned-up reputation on a fancy PR rebrand unless the physical evidence in their possession was just too overwhelming to sweep under the rug anymore.
They absolutely wouldn't.
You don't hold televised congressional hearings for a trick of the light on a camera lens. You only do that when your hand is forced, which leads us directly to the technical capabilities of these vehicles.
This is where the data gets truly astounding.
And the source text uses a word that I think is perfect. It says these things appear to be glitching through our atmosphere.
Glitching is an incredibly apt term when you look at the documented telemetry and sensor data provided in the source material.
Like a video game bug.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to fundamentally contrast the technical evidence of UAPs with the absolute hard limits of human aerospace engineering. We need to be clear here.
Right.
We are not talking about next-generation jets that fly 20% faster or 10,000 feet higher than an F-35.
We aren't talking about slightly better human tech.
No. We are talking about objects demonstrating fundamentally different physical interactions with the environment.
Let's really get into those capabilities because the numbers are just staggering. The text notes that these objects have been tracked pulling sharp 90-degree turns while traveling at speeds upwards of 5,000 miles per hour.
5,000 miles per hour.
And they're doing this instantaneously, without decelerating, without a wide turning radius, and without losing any forward momentum. I want to pause and just force us to think about what that actually means in the physical world.
It's hard to even conceptualize.
It is. If you or I, or even the most highly conditioned G-suit wearing fighter pilot in the military, were strapped into a cockpit that took a hard 90-degree turn at 5,000 miles per hour. I mean, physically, what happens to us?
Biology entirely fails.
Just completely.
Completely. The human body is a fragile container of fluids and organs, and it is subjected to G-forces, which is the measurement of gravity or acceleration.
Right, the stuff that makes you pass out on a roller coaster.
Exactly. A trained pilot can handle maybe 8 or 9 Gs for a few seconds before blacking out as the blood drains from their brain.
Okay.
At 5,000 miles per hour, an abrupt 90-degree change in trajectory would generate hundreds, perhaps thousands of G-forces.
Oh my God.
Under those conditions, the human cardiovascular system and our skeletal structural integrity would instantly, catastrophically collapse.
The text puts it incredibly bluntly. It says any human pilot trying to execute that maneuver would be turned into literal jelly inside the cockpit.
And medically speaking, that is scientifically accurate.
Literal jelly.
Because of inertia. A body in motion stays in motion. If the vehicle suddenly changes direction, the human mass inside wants to keep going straight at 5,000 miles per hour.
So you just slam into the wall of the craft.
Worse, the blood would pool so violently it would burst through the vascular system. Bones would shatter into the immense localized pressure, and internal organs would rupture against the skeletal cavity. The sheer kinetic energy of a mass moving that fast, refusing to stop while the vehicle changes direction, would effectively liquefy organic matter.
That is horrifying.
It is. Yet the sensor data confirms these crafts execute these maneuvers effortlessly with no apparent deceleration curve.
And the weirdness doesn't stop at the turns either. It's also what is blatantly missing from these crafts. Think about a commercial airliner or our absolute best billion-dollar fighter jets. They all have very obvious, very necessary aerodynamic features.
They need them to fly.
But these UAPs, the text points out, there are no visible wings or rotors to provide lift. There are no massive exhaust pipes spitting out jet fuel fire for forward propulsion.
Nothing to push them through the air.
And there is absolutely zero communication. They aren't pinging transponders. There's no how you doing to the local air traffic control. They are completely silent, smooth, seemingly frictionless objects just hanging in the sky.
Which defies every foundational rule in the aerospace textbook.
It just doesn't make sense.
It's important to understand how human flight works. To achieve lift in our atmosphere, human engineering relies entirely on fluid dynamics.
Yeah.
We manipulate air pressure over physical control surfaces, like wings, flaps, and helicopter rotors.
Right, pushing air around.
Exactly. We push the air down so the air pushes us up. To achieve forward thrust, we rely entirely on combustion. We ignite fuel and push massive amounts of mass out the back of an engine to propel the vehicle forward.
Which creates a ton of heat.
Yes, a process that generates immense blinding heat signatures on infrared cameras. But these anomalous objects exhibit absolutely none of these characteristics.
Nothing at all.
They have no flight surfaces, they have no thermal exhaust plumes, they don't seem to care about aerodynamics or thermodynamics. They don't appear to be interacting with the air around them at all.
I love the analogy the text uses for this disparity. It says it's like we're sitting at a table playing checkers, taking it one square at a time, and whoever built these things is playing 4D chess.
It's a very accurate comparison.
We are so incredibly proud of our stealth bombers and our supersonic jets, but compared to these UAPs, our most advanced hardware looks like flimsy paper airplanes caught in a hurricane.
They are outmatched in every metric.
But this is where I get hung up. If our entire understanding of how an object moves through the air is completely bypassed by these vehicles if they don't use lift and they don't use thrust, doesn't this suggest our entire foundational understanding of physics is just fundamentally broken?
It certainly challenges it.
Are we just hitting an error 404 in our science textbooks?
That is the core existential shock embedded in this data.
Yeah.
When you have highly calibrated military radar and infrared sensors observing a craft operating with no flight surfaces, no thermal exhaust, and pulling impossible G-forces, you are forced to confront a very uncomfortable reality.
That we don't know anything.
Well, our physics isn't necessarily broken in the sense that gravity suddenly doesn't exist. Gravity still drops an apple from a tree. Rather, our physics is deeply, profoundly incomplete.
Okay, incomplete.
The data suggests these phenomena possess what the text wonderfully describes as a secret cheat code for reality.
A secret cheat code for reality. I cannot get that phrase out of my head. It perfectly encapsulates how unfair and mind-bending this feels.
But if you think about it mechanically, it's a very fitting analogy. Consider the architecture of a video game. The standard characters in the game are strictly bound by the programmed physics of their digital environment.
Right, they can't jump higher than the code allows.
Exactly. They have to use the stairs, they fall if they step off a ledge. But a developer who knows the underlying code can input a cheat. They can simply bypass those rules.
They can just clip through the walls.
Right. They can walk through walls or fly without wings. These UAPs appear to be operating on a completely different physical frequency than our conventional hardware.
But how, I mean, theoretically, how do you bypass inertia? How do you move without thrust?
The leading theoretical frameworks, and we are purely in the realm of advanced theoretical physics here, involve concepts like metric engineering or space-time manipulation.
Okay, space-time manipulation.
Yes. Instead of using thrust to push a craft through space, which causes friction and G-forces, what if the craft can actively bend or fold the space-time metric around itself?
Wait, really? Like a warp drive?
They're very similar to that theoretical concept. If it creates a localized vacuum or a gravitational bubble, the craft itself isn't actually moving through the air. The space around it is moving.
Oh.
Therefore, the occupants wouldn't feel any inertia, there would be no sonic boom, and there would be no heat exhaust.
Because they aren't actually flying through the air is just sliding past the bubble.
Precisely.
Oh.
But it requires an understanding of energy and math reduction that we haven't even begun to formulate mathematically. The sheer reality of the data demands a completely new scientific paradigm.
It's like we are trying to understand how a modern smartphone works, but our entire frame of reference is a 19th century telegraph machine.
That's exactly it.
We just literally do not possess the scientific vocabulary for it yet. But, and this is the massive but, right? Once you look at the data and accept that the physics are impossible by our standards, once you accept that these objects are undeniably real and they're executing maneuvers, we can't even dream of, the immediate inescapable question is obvious. Who is behind the wheel?
Exactly. The observation of impossible technology inevitably and necessarily leads to the question of its origin. A machine implies a maker.
And this is where we get into the deep lore, which the text accurately notes is basically baked right into our American DNA.
The folklore is extensive.
Oh, as a culture, we are absolutely obsessed with the what-ifs. We love looking behind the curtain. The text mentions how this modern data connects to everything from the granddaddy of all conspiracies, the alleged 1947 Roswell crash, all the way to the stories of regular people in the Midwest swearing they got beamed up in the middle of the night for forced cosmic checkups.
It's the ultimate campfire story.
It is. But the difference now is that we have Navy radar backing up the campfire story.
Right. And the cultural lore is vast and complicated. And whether one views those historical accounts as literal truth, misidentified natural phenomena, or psychological projection, it undeniably demonstrates our deep-seated human need to explain the inexplicable.
We hate mysteries.
We really do. However, the text pushes us to move past the folklore and rigorously evaluate the actual origin theories that could explain these highly advanced crafts. When you eliminate all the debunked sightings and focus purely on the anomalous data, we are left to evaluate three distinct, staggering possibilities.
Let's break them down one by one because each theory has massive implications. Theory number one, and honestly, this is where my cynical brain goes first. Is this just top secret, black budget, Area 51 technology?
The secret human tech theory.
Yeah. Are these crafts just the U.S. military or maybe a highly advanced adversary finally stretching the wings of some next-generation tech they've been hiding for decades?
It is often considered the most terrestrial and grounded explanation. But paradoxically, if you analyze the logistics, it is one of the most troubling and improbable theories.
Really? Why is that?
Let's follow the logic. If these UAPs are black-budget human technology, it implies that a faction within our own government, or perhaps a foreign power, has quietly achieved a century's worth of physics breakthroughs in total secrecy.
Right, which sounds impossible to keep quiet. You're talking about thousands of scientists, supply chains, manufacturing.
Exactly. It means someone on Earth cracked gravity manipulation, solved the problem of inertia, and developed what essentially amounts to a limitless clean energy source.
A limitless clean energy source?
Yes. And yet they chose to hide it for over 70 years.
Oh, that makes me mad just thinking about it.
They hid it while the rest of humanity continues to fight devastating wars over fossil fuels. They hid it while we struggle with climate change and rely on archaic combustion engines.
They just kept it in a bunker.
It would represent the most egregious, monumental hoarding of scientific advancement in human history. Furthermore, it assumes a level of bureaucratic competence and absolute secrecy that human institutions rarely, if ever, demonstrate over multi-generational timelines.
That is a terrifying thought. The idea that the cheat code to save the planet and revolutionize travel is already sitting in a bunker in Nevada, but only a handful of unelected officials have access to it.
It's a bleak possibility.
I'm not sure I buy that human beings could keep a secret that massive, that beneficial, quiet for so long. I mean, someone would have leaked the math by now,
Well, it's highly probable someone would have.
Okay, so if it's not us, that brings us to theory number two, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Are we talking about actual biological or artificial visitors from the Andromeda Galaxy who have traveled light years just to do some donuts in our restricted airspace?
This theory is mathematically plausible given the size of the universe, but it requires us to accept that interstellar travel is not only achievable, but perhaps a routine operation for a sufficiently advanced civilization.
Because space is big.
Incomprehensibly big. The vast distances between star systems are insurmountable with our current understanding of linear physics. Alpha Centauri, our closest neighboring star system, is over 4 light-years away.
Which would take us forever to get to.
Exactly. If these UAPs are extraterrestrial, it means another civilization has solved the problem of vast cosmic distances, likely through the exact same manipulation of space-time that allows them to pull those 90-degree turns without inertia.
But hold on, this is where the alien theory loses me a bit. It raises a massive question of intent.
How so?
If you have the technology to warp space-time and travel across the cosmos, why come all this way just to play cat and mouse with our fighter jets? I mean, if I drive across the entire country to visit a friend, I don't just sit in their driveway, flash my headlights a few times, and drive away.
That's a fair point.
You'd think they would want to land on the White House lawn and say hi, or at least establish some kind of formal communication. Why the secrecy?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you are projecting human behavioral norms onto a non-human intelligence.
Am I?
You are assuming they view us as peers. Consider how human scientists interact with a newly discovered anthill in the Amazon rainforest.
Oh, I see.
We don't march up to the anthill and demand an audience with the queen. We set up cameras. We observe their social structures, their resource gathering, and their reactions to stimuli.
We just watch them.
We remain entirely aloof because the intellectual disparity is so vast. To a civilization capable of metric engineering, our nuclear-powered aircraft carriers might be the equivalent of a remarkably large ant carrying a leaf.
That is slightly depressing.
They might simply be observing the local ecology.
Ouch. Being compared to the ants is a humbling perspective, but it makes an eerie amount of sense. They don't talk to us because we have nothing to offer them but data on primitive development.
It's a distinct possibility.
Okay, but then we have theory number 3 from the text, and here's where it gets really interesting. The text asks a completely wild question.
The temporal theory.
Yeah. What if these crafts are not piloted by aliens from another galaxy, but by humans from 1,000 years in the future? Time-traveling descendants hopping in a machine to come back and observe us, or maybe to intervene and tell us to stop being so destructive before we completely wreck the planet.
It is undeniably the most conceptually radical theory presented in the material. It moves away from spatial travel and delves into temporal mechanics.
I know it sounds like the plot of a sci-fi blockbuster, but honestly, it kind of makes the most sense to me for the 21st century.
Really? You think so?
I do. Think about the era we are living in. We are living in a timeline that is already so, for lack of a better term, main character. We have global pandemics, artificial intelligence waking up, climate crises. Everything feels like a dramatic, high-stakes movie plot right now.
The stakes are certainly high.
So adding time-traveling human descendants coming back to give us a cosmic intervention because we are polluting the planet and pointing nuclear weapons at each other, that feels perfectly on brand for humanity. It's like, hey, great-great-great-grandpa, put down the nukes and stop burning the Amazon. We actually need this biosphere to survive.
It's an entertaining thought experiment, but this raises an important question regarding how we objectively evaluate these 3 distinct theories.
Because they are all so different.
Right. And because each one shatters our current worldview in a completely different, highly disruptive way.
Let's look at that.
If we seriously evaluate the black budget theory, it permanently shatters our trust in human institutions and forces us to rewrite the timeline of human scientific progress. We would have to admit we've been lied to for a century.
Which would cause mass outrage.
Exactly. Now, if we evaluate the extraterrestrial theory, it shatters our biological isolation. It means we are fundamentally not the apex intelligence in the universe, and we are at the mercy of a superior power.
And if we evaluate the time travel theory,
it rewrites the very fabric of causality in physics as we know it. It means time is not a one-way linear arrow, but a navigable, manipulable dimension. It introduces paradoxes that our current physics cannot resolve.
So none of the options are easy to digest.
From a purely analytical standpoint, the text acknowledges that we simply do not have the definitive physical data to prove which of these 3 theories is the absolute truth.
We just have the videos of the crafts.
But the undeniable presence of the phenomena in our skies forces us to grapple with the incredibly uncomfortable fact that at least one of these impossibilities must be true.
That is heavy. That is the kind of thought that keeps you awake at night. Because whether the pilots of these crafts are secretive humans operating out of a subterranean base in Nevada, whether they are biological aliens from the Andromeda Galaxy, or whether they are our own great-grandchildren visiting from the year 3000.
Their presence changes everything.
Yes. Their mere presence hovering silently in our atmosphere forces us to take a hard look in the mirror. It violently forces us to zoom way, way out and reevaluate our own significance in the grand scheme of things.
Which naturally brings us to the broader cosmic context that the text outlines in its final chapters. It asks us to step away from the immediate panic of the sightings and confront the pure, unfathomable scale of the universe we reside in.
The text describes the scale of the universe as makes your brain hurt huge. And that is such a wonderfully accurate, visceral description.
It's apt.
We aren't just talking about a big neighborhood. We are talking about billions upon billions of galaxies, with each of those galaxies containing trillions of stars, and orbiting those stars are countless exoplanets.
A truly infinite expanse.
Trying to mentally picture that scale is impossible for the human mind. It's like trying to count every single grain of sand on every single beach on Earth, and then realizing that all that sand is just a tiny fraction of what's out there.
And this is where the text demands we apply pure logic, probability, and mathematics to the situation. When you have a sample size that astronomically large, a giant cosmic soup of planetary bodies, many of which formed billions of years before our own solar system even coalesced from dust, assuming that we, on Earth, are the only living intelligent entities to emerge from that process, simply does not add up.
The math just doesn't work.
The mathematical probability of Earth being the sole exclusive harbor of life in an infinite multi-billion-year-old playground mathematically approaches 0. It is an absurdity to think we are alone.
the text has such a great culturally irrelevant phrase for this assumption. It says that believing humanity is the only intelligent life around is the ultimate display of main character energy.
It is a bit arrogant, isn't it?
It's this deep-seated, incredibly arrogant delusion we have as a species that the entire vast universe is just a dark, empty backdrop designed solely for our specific human drama. We act like the billions of galaxies out there are just pretty stage lights hung up for the Earth show.
It is an incredibly anthropocentric view of reality, born out of historical ignorance and a lack of sensory range. The text uses a very powerful, highly evocative analogy to anchor this concept.
The ocean analogy.
Yes, it compares this human main character delusion to a person treading water in the very middle of the deep ocean.
Right.
You are looking at the flat surface of the water around you. You don't see anything splashing, so you confidently assume you are the only fish in the entire sea, simply because you can't currently see the sharks circling hundreds of feet beneath you.
That analogy gives me literal chills, because when you are treading water, you are entirely limited by your perspective. You only see what is immediately on your eye level.
You miss everything below.
You don't see the depth. You don't see the massive, complex, thriving ecosystems operating entirely independent of you, just a few hundred feet down in the dark. We are just humanity, bobbing on the surface of reality, assuming there are no sharks in the water simply because they haven't bothered to swim up and bite us yet.
Precisely. And it's crucial to understand that the sharks in this analogy aren't necessarily predatory or malevolent.
Good to know.
The text isn't fear-mongering. The sharks simply represent a massive, complex, and highly evolved reality that exists just beyond our limited biological sensory perception and our current technological capabilities.
They are the 4D chess players.
Exactly. They are the 4D chess players moving seamlessly beneath our rudimentary checkerboard. They have always been there. We just finally have the radar instruments sensitive enough to detect the ripples they make on the surface.
So what does this all mean? I want to pause here and ask you, the listener, directly. If you really let this sink in, if you look at the Navy data, if you accept the undeniable math of the cosmos, if you accept that this universe is an infinite playground and we are categorically, mathematically not alone, how does that change things for you?
It should change your entire perspective.
How does that alter your perspective when you are sitting in gridlock traffic on your morning commute tomorrow? How does it change the way you weigh your next big life decision? If we truly aren't the main characters of the cosmos, does that make our daily grinding stresses, the looming work deadlines, the annoying traffic, the petty social media arguments feel a little less heavy?
That is the ultimate philosophical utility of unpacking this entire topic. Embracing this cosmic perspective, recognizing the data and the existence of the metaphorical sharks beneath the surface, is not about feeling insignificant, small, or terrified.
Right, it's not about feeling small.
It is about fostering a profound sense of intellectual humility. It's about waking up to the awe-inspiring reality that there's so much more to learn and that our current game of checkers is just a tiny, localized event on a much, much larger ancient board.
It's exciting, really.
It encourages deep critical thinking and a profound, revitalized curiosity about the magnificent universe we inhabit.
It's a reminder to keep looking upright. And that brings us to the final, very practical call to action from the text, because this isn't just an abstract philosophical exercise to ponder over coffee. This phenomenon is happening right now in our skies.
Every day.
So the next time you are out walking the dog late at night, or you're taking a breather in that lawn chair under the stars, and you see something pull a maneuver that is undeniably something no commercial drone, no helicopter, and no satellite could ever pull off, don't just shrug your shoulders, convince yourself it was a bird, and go back to checking your phone.
Maintain that curiosity.
Yeah.
Do not succumb to the cognitive dissonance. Actively observe the anomaly. Note the speed, the lack of sound, the trajectory.
And please, have your camera ready. The text makes a hilarious but very real, desperate plea at the end. Please, for the love of everything, try to keep your hands steady for once.
Yes, the blurry photos need to stop.
Stop filming these frantic, blurry, shaky, potato-quality messes where we can't tell if we're looking at a spaceship or a street lamp. We all have incredible 4K cameras sitting right in our pockets now. Let's actually use them properly.
It's essential for data collection.
Because the reality is the truth isn't just out there in some far-off, unreachable galaxy anymore. The data shows it might be hovering right over your head while you're staring down, scrolling through TikTok.
The essential takeaway from all of this research is to stay fiercely curious. Stay awake to the possibilities that exist far beyond our current limited understanding of physics, and keep watching the skies. The historical paradigm is shifting right beneath our feet, and we are all active witnesses to it.
I completely agree. But I want to leave you with one final lingering question to mull over as you go about your day. We've spent this time talking about these phenomena operating with a cheat code for reality, manipulating space-time in ways we can barely comprehend. And we know our governments are finally reluctantly admitting they exist. But what happens the day that cheat code actually gets leaked to us?
A dangerous prospect.
If humanity suddenly gains access to the 4D chessboard and we figure out how to bypass inertia and travel the stars, do we elevate ourselves to become the enlightened, peaceful sharks of the cosmic ocean? Or do we just take that infinite, unimaginable power and use it to wreck our own planet even faster? Keep watching the skies.